Big outdoor festival, as you know. Lots of outdoor toilet facilities, which Mark very quickly picked one out, cleaned it from top to bottom, made it his own. But I gotta tell you, that occurrence changed my life in terms of working for him, because I knew this place better be clean. So that was one funny story. But next we have a fellow who's delved into the history of our favorite planet, Mr. Chris Bennett. You know, they found the remains of a 2,700-year-old guy in China who was packing weed. There were certainly remains of marijuana. There was probably some Vogue papers. The oldest remains of a Ziploc bag. But Chris has been with us for a very long time. He's done lots and lots for this activist community, from way back from hemp bars to Pot TV and the Urban Shaman, and on it goes. We love him dearly. Here he is, Chris Bennett.
Well, it's a celebration. You know, it's funny because when I first became a pot activist here in BC, there wasn't any other pot activists. And, you know, I'd come down with my group, Patriotic Canadians for Him, to talk at Dana's SFU meetings, Legal Ethical Action for Drugs. And I'd, like Dana said, show my little piece of hemp cloth, a little piece of hemp cardboard, and I'd make these hemp seed bars to pay for my propaganda that I was selling and stuff like that. And I remember when Mark Emery first showed up here in Vancouver, I think the first time I met him was at an April 23rd rally in like 1993, and I'd seen Mark in a high time, so I knew who he was, and I was like, hey, I know that guy. And I said, yeah, sit up here and sell some books, you know, and I was like totally stoked, and there was some crappy rally going on the island, you know. It was all just kind of very early days of the hemp marijuana movement in 1993, and it was in this little town, Courtney, up this mountain. It was a total flop of an event. It rained, and the police set up at the bottom of the mountain and were busting anybody that was going up the mountain. And it was a total flop, and Mark had a shitty time, everybody had a shitty time. And a few weeks later, Mark put out this newsletter, the Hemp and Marijuana newsletter, and the article was, "Where oh where are the hemp professionals?" And it flagged us all as a bunch of hippie losers kind of thing, and grassroots guys. And, you know, me at the time, I had big dreadlocks and all my own homemade hemp clothes, and you know what I mean? I was living out in the bullet, you know what I mean? So it was kind of rang true, and then I started getting, we had a little activist community. We've been putting on some rallies and stuff like that, just kind of getting going here in Vancouver. And I got all the calls, who is this fucking asshole? Who is this asshole? And I start calling around, and I go, Jesus Christ, this fucking asshole. And then I told my buddy Ian Hunter, he goes, oh, well, I'm working with that guy now. I'm opening a shop, and I'm like, you fucking dick. And then I talked to Dana Larson, same deal, and I'm like, what the fuck, you know? And then Mark calls me after he buys a bunch of my hemp bars and shit like that, and I told him to him, you know, it's business. That's what I do with Mark. Personal issues are one thing, business is business. He's a true professional. And I knew that Mark was a man of high ethics, and I wrote a letter to his magazine now that has started up. And people still, to this day, you know, 15, 16 years later, bring up this letter I wrote to me. It was called Essential Asshole, I think. And I told the story of, you know, Mark and the marijuana movement here in BC and what had been going on and how everybody met in his newsletter, and everybody called me up and saying, who is this asshole, you know? And I said, but, you know, I have to admit, you know, I took a look at my own newsletters, and they look like fucking ransom notes. You know, I like that stuff. I didn't know how to use a computer, you know what I mean? It was like sticking stuff on a piece of paper and shit like that, you know. And I probably freaked out every mom and dad that saw me, you know what I mean, with my big dreadlocks. And then we had dreadlocks in 1992, 93. And I was like, fucking, I'd come to Mark's shop, and it was all slick and bustling and rustling, and everything was so professional. I was like, shit, man, you know. I got to admit, I guess I'm kind of envious of what this guy's done here, because this just wouldn't have happened with me. And I began to realize, you know, and I said in the letter, just as the hands and the feet serve a purpose on the body of man, so does the asshole. And perhaps the body of the people that make up the hemp movement need an asshole for the movement to move through for a while. Bottoms up, Mark, and good luck to you in 1995. You know, he's so streamlined it and so mainstreamed and penetrated this thing to it, and that's what really this is all about, because you know, Mark may have sold seeds all over the world and all over America and all over North America and all over Europe and all over the place. But everywhere those seeds went, they went with a message of legalization, of liberty, of taking back our right to the natural plants of Europe, and taking back our right to the most useful and beneficial of all plants on the earth. And, you know, when you walk that road to liberty and legalization, no matter where you are in the world, all those roads lead back to the White House in the United States of America, because that is the depot, ground zero of prohibition worldwide, and that is what we're dealing with. And what they're worried about is the mind change that cannabis offers. You know, Ronald Reagan, when he was senator, he said, these kids, they get together, they read books, they smoke marijuana, and they talk. Like this was somehow a big threat, that this was a bad thing. And his son, Ronald Reagan Jr., he said of his dad's prohibition and prohibitionist attitude and marijuana being a mild substance, he said, it's not marijuana, the mildly mind-altering substance. It's marijuana, the antithesis of the state. And that's what this is really about. And that's what they're threatened by, because they know that people who smoke weed aren't going to support oil wars in Iraq,